So this time, I'm just going to give you like just kind of a peek behind the curtain of our financial forms that Lisa and I go over quite often. And even these are just like your everyday financial forms. You have that in the one, your RFF. It won't even do closeout until we do that later. And I'll go over some on how to fill them out with a fake example. And there. Financial management forms. So when it comes to the financial forms, it provides existing across the CDBG program. Though some forms may differ slightly, we use generally the same forms for our annual DR MIT programs. Forms help us run grants properly by collecting necessary information as part of our internal controls. As part of our internal control environment, these forms keep us compliant with HUD. We get most of our information from a project's funding approval and grant agreement. As we go through these forms, I'll be showing you how to fill them out. So the SFM01 is a form that lets us know who is authorized to be able to sign RFFs, and it also provides documentation on the separation of duties, as the certifying signature in the center cannot be one of the certified signatures in the first section there. So let's go through this form real quick. So the name of our recipient today is the City of Anytown, Missouri. Their project is 18 DPMF 99. That's a disaster project for multifamily. Their contract date is from January 1st, 24 to January 1st, 27. And their fiscal year date, end date is 6/30. No need to put anything in for the contract number, as our projects or the grant agreements are done by the project number, so we'll just go with that. Our first signature that's authorized to sign for RFS is Jane Anybody, who is the city administrator, and that's her signature over there. We also have Chris Someone, who is the city supervisor, and that's her signature. You have to have at least two. You can have three or more, whatever's helpful to you. We have to have at minimum 2 signatures. Our mayor is John Doe. He signs and gives us some contact information and dates it. So that's the mayor. The highest elected official is who's certifying it, and that's the same person who cannot sign for RFS. That's that separation of duties. Administrative contracts, this is like if the subrecipient signed a contract with the grant administrator, RPC, COG, our City of Anytown signed a contract with South Green Foothills Regional Planning Commission, and their administrator is Grant Adam Schrader. I was really proud of that name when I thought of it. And this is just their contact information if we ever need to stay in contact with them as well. And then the financial assistant is, there you go, $100. And they also, Hundo works for the Regional Planning Commission, so that's the same information as above. The accounting system used, since it is a CDBG grant, we'll be using the CDBG accounting system, and then the subrecipient will put in their fiend. I don't want to guess on a fiend because I don't want to put in any random numbers because I'm afraid I actually might get one right. So I just went XXX, but obviously you guys have to know the tax ID number for them. The vendor input ACH form, this was the older form that helped us put the subrecipient, get them set up for payments through SAM 2. This will eventually get phased out when movers becomes full effect. But I will still go over on how to fill it out, just in case you still need it. So we have the City of Anytown, who puts their information in that top left corner there. Then they'll go over and put in their fee number and mark that they are a city government. Ask some questions along the sides, so some check marks. Are you new to doing business with the state of Missouri? If yes, then we can go ahead and just pretty much skip the rest. If no, then they're going to ask, are you changing information, etc. The following spaces are what information is changing. And then it asks towards the bottom, have you or an immediate family member ever served in the U.S. Armed Forces? If you want to receive information regarding so, because this can go out to not just organizations, it can go out to single people who receive payments from the state. Then the subrecipient sends this to their banking partners, to their bank, because they need to fill out the accounting information. So we got Fake Bank at 321 Financial Avenue. They'll put in, again, I want to guess at a right number, so they'll put in their routing number and their account number. Then the name on the account should have City of Anytown -CDBG, so that we know that is directly a CDBG account. And it should be a checking account, as you be not only taking deposits, but making payments out to it and cannot gain interest. And then we have our CFO wire refunds, and they'll date, and then contact information, not necessarily for them to put a telephone number, but if they do, it's good. And then they'll send it back to the subrecipient, who will finish it up with checking that they hereby assert that the state of Missouri is allowed to deposit funds into their account. And then it can be sent to anyone who has financial decision over the community. We have Amy Persona, who is the city treasurer, who signs dates, provides contact information, and then signs certifying internal revenue service information down here. General information there. So request for funds. The request for funds is for when a subrecipient, they need to make payments or have already made payments and to their contractors, and they need to ask for their grant funds to either finish the payments or to reimburse them. So we'll go through how to fill this bad boy out. Upper right corner, we got the RFF, it's number 1, it's our first payment. The city of Anytown is requesting for CDBG. The date is June 15th, 2024, and the amount of the request is $239,544.90. This is, out of this top part, that's the most important, is that amount, because it should pop up at least 3 times throughout the RFF. And if there's any differences, then it's going to get kicked back. And we're going to be asking, like, hey, this number doesn't match any of these other numbers. Tell us why. So, the subrecipient of City of Anytown with their project of 18 DPMF 99. And then the award date, which is on the funding approval, 1/1/2024. Next section, section 1, is the payee section. So this is just a list of who's receiving the CDBG funds and their activity that they'll be found under. So, as an example, we have Joe Schmo Construction, and they did some work for us under the Streets and Roads activity for the amount of $193,725.90. We also had some engineering costs from Steel and Beam Engineering with their funding of $35,519. Steel and Beam did some more engineering work, did some construction inspection, some other stuff there, and so we're going to pay them $12,300. Good thing about this is that this has a formula that should calculate all the numbers at the bottom for your total. And again, it should match that $239,544.90. If it doesn't match, just go over your documentation again, see what your total amount is supposed to be, and make sure it's correct. So then there's the section 2. This is kind of how you keep track of the budget throughout the life of the project. It's going to have a list of all your activities. We'll go to the first one. This is a multifamily project, so it's affordable rental housing activity has, the fund year 2023. And the grant it was awarded for that just one activity was $2,215,000. So we'll just go ahead and do the rest of the activities for this project. It has acquisition, storm sewer, streets or roads, engineering, construction inspection, other professional services and administration, and all the funds that are allocated to each line item right here. You'll fill that out. And then again, the form should total up at the bottom here. And then we're going to what this request is. This request is pretty much all the numbers that we're trying to get from the first two sections, mainly from the payee section. We got the 193,725.90 for that Joe Schmo construction, engineering design 33,519. And since engineering design and engineering construction inspection are two separate activities, we're going to keep those separate. And there's that 12,300. And then it should total up at the bottom there for that 239, 544.90. That's the third time we will see that. Again, if there's any discrepancies, just go back to see where they may be and correct them. The form continues to calculate itself. There we go. All the way across. It will subtract out. It will take this number, subtract this number, and get your final amount right here. So this is what would be left in that line item of the project. And then what's left in the project as a whole right there. Request for funds, so this is just some language that certifies that to the best of your knowledge that everything is correct, true, and without fraud, waste, and abuse. Certify that this project has not generated program income, and certify that the contracts associated with the above request for funds has been executed. And so going back to our SFN 01, we have Jane anybody who signed it. We have Chris someone who also signed it. And then we have Grant Administrator who put the RFF together. With the request for funds, you're going to want to put in any and all supporting documentation. And the supporting documentation should kind of read like a story on every account on the RFF. Because I go through it and I make sure that what you're requesting is the exact amount that's portrayed up here. And I do my little math on my little calculator, make sure everything's correct. If there's cash match associated with the project and you're using it on this RFF, even if it's there's no specific spot to put it in there, even if you just handwrite X amount CDBG funds, X amount cash match, it helps me when I'm doing all my math. We already went over the budget amendment request. Tiffany did an amazing job with her City of Oz example yesterday. I'm actually kind of jealous, which I thought something like that. I was like, hey, you can City of Anytown. That's pretty clever. No, I like City of Oz. So we're not going to go through the amendment request. The projected expenditures by quarter, HUD really wants projects to stay on track in expecting CDBG funds. The state utilizes this project expenditures form, so the project can predict each quarter how they plan to spend the funds. This is usually filled out at the beginning of the application when you put in the application, but can be filled out during as the project moves forward. If the project does not draw the projected amount for the quarter, we'll reach out to see what we can do to get the project back on track. Federal Expenditures Reporting Form. This is also known as the ROFA. Does anyone here know what ROFA stands for? R-O-F-A. No? Yeah, that's been lost to history. Someone told me it meant something at one point, and now they don't know what it means. I say that it stands for Reporting on Federal Assistance. But I don't know if that's true, I just made something up. But on the road fund, we're reporting for our fiscal year how much of federal funds were expended, and if the project or the subrecipient will need a single audit for that fiscal year. And this is not just CDBG funds, this will include any other federal funds that they expended, I'm gonna make sure you use that word, expended through the fiscal year. Can be USDA, can be FEMA, or any other thing, even if it's not related to us in any way. Any kind of federal reporting needs to be reported on this form. But our subrecipients, just wants to come up, City of Anytown, is reporting for their fiscal year 24, and they just spent the CDBG dollars of that RFF we just turned in. And it turns out that because of that, they won't need a single audit for that fiscal year. Because form's a little outdated, it needs to be updated to that $1 million mark. Right now it still says 750, but we'll get that updated to the 1 million. Down lower on the form, we just got contact person responsible for working with the independent auditor. We're going to skip that since we didn't need an independent auditor. We just need John Doe, the mayor, to certify that the information on it is correct. With his contact information, and he sent it off to the city administrator to have it signed and sent to us. Satisfaction and condition form, this is more of an internal form for us when it comes to our risk assessments. It's used to remedy any findings that was found on the project during a risk assessment. For example, if a subrecipient was initially labeled as high risk, the subrecipient can provide a plan to remedy the situation, and it may be determined to lower the subrecipient's risk level. And if we determine that it can be lowered, we will go ahead and fill out this form and put it in the project file and lower that risk. QPRs. It's my favorite part of the disaster recovery mitigation grants is QPRs. Every 3 months, I get to send these out to the subrecipients and grant administrators, have them fill them out and send them back to me. It's our way of reporting to HUD our performance measures, mainly our performance measures and how funds were expended. As you can see here, for the City of Anytown, for that RFF that they did, they drew down, total funds expended, they have the total withdrawal line on here. So they drew down the 193, 725. Oh, that's right, because it goes by activity. I think I'm just going to do the one activity, which is the Streets or Roads activity right here. And that's the thing, HUD, when it comes to the QPRs, we're reporting on each individual activity, not as a project as a whole. And so for that activity, as we noticed earlier in the RFF, we drew down $193,725.90. We spent $180,000 in the most impacted and distressed area. We got to make sure that for a lot of our grants, 4317, 4451, we're expending at least 80% of those funds in HUD designated mid areas, which is most impacted and distressed areas. And then we spent some funds, 13,000 outside of the HUD impacted areas. Then there's a little box down here for your funding source of non-CDBG DR funds. This is kind of like your cash match. A lot of disaster recovery and mitigation projects does not have cash match. Some do, but if there's any funds that are not CDBG, did not come from us directly, and they are spent on the project, just let us know where it came from and when it was spent this quarter, and then accumulation of funds. Accomplishment performance measures. The accomplishments and performance measures is part of financial management as part of GPRA and GPRAMA. It's the Government Performance Results and Modernization Act. It's just the way that we tell HUD how the project is going through the quarters. A lot of times I'll send these out to the recipients, and they need to tell us at the start of their project what they plan to do with the funds. That's what the proposed number is. As you can see, for our streets and roads, we plan on paving 1,300 linear feet of public improvements. A lot of times, I do the best I can to get this information from the application. And as we had discussed earlier, when Debbie had mentioned doing those narratives and making sure that we know, that's a great place to start. But not all that information is captured all at once, so I will send a blank QPR out and ask the subrecipients to let us know what they plan on doing with our funds. And then you just keep kind of a running total throughout the project. If, you know, we spent 180,000 and we did 100 linear feet of road, and we provided 10 hours of Section 3 labor hours, and I think I got that backwards. And just make sure we're keeping track of our Section 3 labor hours targeted and total labor hours as well. Since Streets and Roads is an indirect beneficiary project, it's typically the population that is benefiting from the road directly. So I mean, like pretty much anyone who we drive on the roads will be benefiting. So the city of Anytown did their population and let us know that they had a low number, LMI number of 100 proposed, and then proposed mod of 500. And then as those beneficiaries are benefiting from the project, just let us know what the ethnic and racial breakdown is of them. This form also comes up during the closeout process. We do need to make sure that we are tracking it throughout the life of the project by quarter. And then Section 3 information, how each quarter you try to follow the Section 3 reporting regulations. And if you don't meet your safe harbor benchmark, just let us know about your qualitative efforts. Activity progress narrative. This is, again, another narrative that you'll tell us what the activity itself did for that previous quarter. A lot of times I'll get some recipients who will put like a narrative of the project as a whole, or sometimes I'll get a narrative of, you know, this is a Streets and Roads project, but for some reason they're telling me that legal went and reviewed the grant agreement or something like that. It's just like, I need more of a description of what the activity itself did. So like here we did contractor was able to lay 100 feet of asphalt between Ash Street and Juniper Ave. Staff went out to evaluate quality of work to ensure contract is being fulfilled properly. Another thing about these narratives, yeah, we do want you to give us as much information as possible, but also remember to keep in mind the PII. We want to make sure we're not giving out personal identifiable information, especially with things like the down payment assistance. I have seen some activity narratives that says, Joe Schmo, not Joe Schmo because he's our mayor, or I don't know, Jane Anybody, again, someone I already used, Jane Anybody received $50,000 in credit payment. Well, these QPRs are actually published on our website, so it's, you know, it could be bad that someone could go and see, oh, someone in my town has got $50,000 for a credit payment. You know, so just keep it general. Just say it could be something as simple as a resident took part of the program, took part of this activity, and we were able to provide down payment assistance. You know, it's just kind of keep it general, but also, you know, we want to make sure that we're telling a story of what activity has done.